Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So there's something really weird going on with the video in this. I don't know how it's showing on the other end, but Chief, do you have a moment? Maybe.
Usually, you
get
go for the video. You can't figure it out.
Okay, is it just a weird filter?
That's literally it.
Blur background, there we go. Okay, we've got it figured out. Thank you.
You blew it.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried to keep it on wraps for a long time.
Thanks.
This is Mayor Springer, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's Wednesday, January 15th at 7 o'clock. Clerk Barr, will you do, how many citizens are joining us and our guests this evening?
We have 4 participants online right now. And online, we hope that our attorney, Chris Coker, will be joining us soon. In person here, we have Commander Timmons of the Aberdeen Police Department. Thank you, Commander. We have Chris Orkney of Community Water Systems, and we also have Lieutenant Cooper filling in for Chief Valley. Thank you.
Clerk Barr, will you take roll?
I'll be happy to do so. Councilmember Skinner,
I'm here.
Councilmember Wynn,
I'm here.
Councilmember Spargo,
Here.
Councilmember Collette,
Here.
Councilmember Darcy. Here. All present.
Tonight, we're moving forward. I want to welcome everybody to our new year, 2025. We're moving forward and good to see everyone here this evening. We're going to move on to approve our agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Councilman Spargo seconds.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Say nay. Hearing none, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda this evening?
I move that we, the consent agenda,
Please state your name.
Councilmember Colette.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Say nay. Hearing none, council comments only at this time. Do you have any council member comments this evening?
Happy New Year.
Yeah, I'll just also say Happy New Year, and I'm really excited for some of the work that we're looking to do for this year. I think we've done a really, well, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too hard. We've worked hard to keep the city afloat in this last year, and I'm excited to pursue a more positive vision for the future of the city moving forward.
I agree. Okay, any other comments from council members this evening? Okay, so we're gonna move on to committee reports. Auditing committee.
Auditing, we did not have, we go to finance next. I did look over the vouchers today, signed off.
And thank you, Sue, for doing that. Council member Darcy. Parks.
No meeting, no report. We will have our next meeting scheduled for the final Wednesday in January.
Yes.
If anyone is interested in joining us, please shoot myself or council member Spargo an email.
It's looking like it'll be a January 29th, 5:30. Location to be determined, but we will make that public once we get it scheduled.
Public Safety Committee.
We have not had a meeting. We will try and work one out, get one put together, move forward with that for the new year.
Public Works.
Public Works, they've still been working away, trying to clear drains, keep log jams down. We are down another worker. It is just Tom, our experienced, veteran on the workforce, of the public workforce right now. But hopefully we get some new blood hired on sooner than later. That's all I have.
Councilmember Darcy, anything you'd like to add?
I know that we're looking forward to getting, the new employees. You guys got through the first round of interviews and, contestants have been picked. Or will be getting notified, yeah, and then there will also be, some work being, when we have our next meeting, we'll go over projects that need to be done around town, getting ready for spring coming in, and there's some things that need to be done around that, so, yeah. Yeah, lots of things there.
Great, thank you. City official report, Clerk Barr.
Sure, getting ready for year end. I know that always sounds funny, but us accountants are always backwards looking, right? So really, my mind is still back in December and making sure that all entries are posted in the right period they're supposed to be in. And Washington State has an interesting law, and that is any payments that go out before January 20th really have to be booked into the prior year. So it's making sure all that happens, and that's only for cities, not for individuals. I'll clarify that. So getting all of that taken care of, then ensuring tables are updated correctly and all that to begin the new year.
Chief Lehman.
Good evening and happy new year to you guys. 2,233 incidents in 2024 between the two of us. Give or take, portions of that where it was 1.5 of us. So we stayed busy in 2024, 291 calls for us since December 1st. And an additional 24 calls that were handled by our Aberdeen Police Department, which a spreadsheet of that was emailed out, I believe, today on that. Thank you to Commander Steve Timmons for providing that. We had several major incidents occur since December 1st, including a complex sexual offense case that sensitive nature. And I just want to publicly say thank you to the Aberdeen Police Department because they were integral in helping us with that, with several layers of help that was very much needed for a unique case, and an arrest was made. So thank you to Aberdeen Police Department for that.
Commander Timmons, anything else you'd like to add?
I have nothing.
Okay, thank you for being here. And then we have Lieutenant Coker, who is filling in for Chief Valley tonight.
We've had 15 calls for the month of January so far. We have three people out in EMT class right now, and we have 4 out in fire academy. So we'll be getting some additional people with more training the city out. And then Chief Valley has had their baby, and the healthy baby.
Little boy, correct?
Yep.
So he's on, what is it?
Paternity.
Paternity leave, yes. Congratulations to the chief and his family. And then building official Bill Cedar.
I have nothing to report.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on to my report, the mayor's report. On Thursday, January 9th, we did a walkthrough in the new municipal building. There are still a few things that Rollins is addressing, a few outstanding items that need to be taken care of. The city has items that we need to complete. We're responsible for the bathroom, ADA bar, fire extinguisher. The chief is working on evident lockers for the new building and our wireless system that is going on. We will be starting negotiations this month with Aberdeen. In fact, next week regarding the sewer, Citizens Online and Citizens Hill. You know, we were able not to raise any rates. Unfortunately, going into the new year, it is going to happen. We were not independent in our sewer nor our water. And so with that said, you know, Aberdeen has been amazing in support in their police. backing us up when we've had a water incident. And honestly, the doors would have been shut at the beginning of the year if Aberdeen wasn't there. I think they are going to work with us, but there will be an increase. And so we want citizens to be involved. If you have questions, please reach out. And we are going to do our best to represent you and try to come through what will probably be a rough bump to the beginning of this year. And so moving on from that, we did get some grants and donations. I applied for a quarterly impact grant, which is a small grant from the Grace Harbor Community Foundation. It's put out every quarter. And what I did is I wrote a small grant for having new basketball hoops in our parks, and we did get the $5,000, so that's kind of nice to put the new hoops. There'll be one up at Mill Creek, one at Lions Park, and one at Olympic Terrace. And there'll be lights, LED lightings on that too. So that, that's kind of nice. No money out of the city coffers for something like that. Moving on from there, we received a generous donation from the Druzianic Family Charitable Foundation. I've had the pleasure of working with this foundation for the last 3 years before I became mayor, and I had the nonprofit that I created, Friends of Highland Park and Parks of Cosmopolis. And so he had contacted me and said, do you want some money? I never turned down money. So he was very specific that he wanted to give $5,000 of that to the fire department, and that money, I am told, is going to go to bunker gear washers. I know the chief and I had worked on some grants and, weren't successful in getting that. And it is needed for their turnout gear, so that's nice. Gentlemen, you will be getting that. And then the other 10,000 went to the nonprofit, which we needed some trees removed from Mill Creek Park. And so that came to a total of $6,000. They were trees that would be dangerous for citizens in the park and for the projects that we're working now. And the remaining grants will be used on other projects that were designated. At this time, I'm exploring a number of grants for infrastructure, other funding. If anyone knows of grants, please reach out to me. I'm going to be busy in the next few months, really looking at grants and writing grants. We had excitement this Sunday. You're all aware of that. We had a pretty major water main break Sunday, January 12th. The leak was found by Officer Bailey, who was sitting on First Street down by the RV park and could hear the water running. And he had reached out and called Public Works, Tom, and Tom reached out and called Aberdeen. They reacted very quickly. I would say they were over on that event within an hour by 3 o'clock. And with that said, I reached out immediately and called our water person, Chris Oakley, who will be speaking to this. And we ended up putting notices out right away. There's a break. There's going to be low water. Then it was no water in the lower flats, in Cosmopolis. And just keeping everybody updated through our Cosmopolis Facebook page and all the other various sites. And we know that we have a majority of senior citizens that do not have that technology. I had on Facebook reached out and asked citizens, please contact those people in your neighborhood who may be having questions, and let them know what is going on and keep them appraised of what was happening. I want to really say thank you to our citizens who were very patient. I know we had a few that were frustrated, but overall, our citizens were very gracious, very understanding, and the situation was taken care of very quickly. And we had our guidance from Chris meeting the guidelines that that were important that we meet. We put the boil advisory in. We posted in several places at the post office. And then on the 14th, 11:45, that advisory was lifted. And I would like our water service provider, Chris Oakley from Community Water Systems, to provide a little more detail, if you would. please.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I'm Chris Orkney with Community Water Systems. I'm the operator in responsible charge for this water system. I was brought on in a training and guidance capacity. Currently, we're running operations until we figure out our next moves for this system. The water incident started around 2 p.m. when it was noticed. Aberdeen responded very quickly. Within about 3 p.m., Aberdeen was on site and beginning repairs. Tom began isolating the affected area to the best of his ability. I think we impacted 200 to 300 customers. Based on that, our guidance is to issue a boil water advisory due to the pressure loss in the system. The boil water advisory lasted until Tuesday around 11:30. Upon successful collected samples that were taken in the distribution system. We took 3 samples, all of them came back satisfactory, and between the city crew and Tom's efforts, they were able to get that leak and restore service back in pretty good time, considering the hazardous conditions of a pipe hanging on a bridge and then potentially fighting the tide to get the repair made before the tide came back in. System was pressurized and everybody was back in service approximately 6 p.m. We had fielded several calls. I think the mayor and city hall staff took the brunt of it. I fielded several calls from concerned citizens on service interruption, what it meant for the water advisory and the impact to citizens and businesses and the school. That's my report. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you for your time. I appreciate that information.
So I'm still getting questions. And so we still have citizens that are talking about particles in their water, maybe some brown water or cloudy water. Could you talk about the testing and what that means, and then what citizens are still seeing?
The testing we did is a bacteria test, so coliform or bacteria in the water that got water on a pressure loss event or a mainline break. We're gonna do back-T testing, and then when we get the results back, we're going to either go on to the next step, the troubleshooting if they're unsuccessful, but all 3 of our samples came back satisfactory. And then the other thing we're going to warn our customers about is discolored water or cloudy water due to air being entrained into the water. If you have cloudy water and you were to pour a glass of water and you were to see that cloudiness settle from the bottom up, that's air that's entrained into the water. And that should only last a few days after an incident like this, but it could last up to a week. Discolored water could be from homeowners piping being stirred up, the distribution system piping being stirred up and causing some discolored water. Again, that should settle out in 3 to 7 days tops. When we take the distribution system offline, it is easy to upset the distribution system piping as well as the homeowner's plumbing. And then it could take several days for everything to return back to normal. But all of our sampling came back satisfactory, and now we're just looking at aesthetic complaints.
And when you heal 3, and you're thinking 3 samples, so they were taken at key points at each end of the city, at the school, at each end and in the middle. So, it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna knock on a door and take a few. It was spread out and making sure that those samples,
Yes, they were representative of the area that was affected.
Can you, I imagine you're not a medical professional, but can you, say anything to indicate if somebody did consume contaminated water, what sort of symptoms they might expect, how severe?
I would point them to the boil water advisory, and it has the information in there, but it could be stomach issues to that nature. So I would, you know, if anyone has any questions, we could certainly give them some handouts from the state of Washington Department of Health Office of Training.
And Chris, could you speak to your contact with the Department of Health and the county also?
So on the day, the evening and afternoon that it happened, we contacted as per our regulation, we contacted the Department of Health emergency compliance officer that's on duty for the weekend. And we stated what we had going on. The duty officer agreed with our assessment that we needed to go under a boil water advisory. We did that within probably within an hour of knowing just how much we were going to affect the service area. And then we were advised to call county health. We did that. We talked to the on-call duty person for the county, for county health. And shortly thereafter, we received notification from emergency management for Grace Harbor County if they wanted us to, or if we wanted them to send out additional reverse 911 messaging. We did not feel it was necessary due to it did not impact the entire system, only about 1/3 of the system. But these options are available for the city of Cosmopolis because of current working agreements with emergency management.
Any questions from the council? With that said, Chief, so we were fielding a lot of phone calls, a lot of personal emails, staff, all of us. And so as a mayor, an acting city administrator, the reality is I'm on call 24/7 and I reply and after that, but a lot of people who do not use social media did reach out to 911. And so we thought meeting with the chief, talking with Chris, among ourselves in the office, how do we get information out to our citizens? And how can we do it smoothly and effectively? And so, Chief, do you want to talk about what
I'd be
we
happy
came up
to.
with?
First of all, I would refer to what Chris was saying is, if it was an emergent situation with more information needing to be pushed out through Grace Harbor Emergency Management, they refer to it as a reverse 911. Some people might not know what that is, but they're able to notify a specific geographical area of subscribers, phone systems, and a recorded message goes to them and tells them what's going on. So first of all, be assured that if it was of an emergent nature and he decided that based upon the samples that was something that needed to be done, that's something that could be done. But recognizing that there was a lot of calls to our 911 center that shouldn't have necessarily gone to the 911 center, but yet people need to have information. We created an email account this week with the city. It's publicworks@cosmopolislaw.gov that we're going to be pushing out to give people an avenue to send information, subscriber information of, hey, we're affected by this. So a good communications, and that will go to several department heads when that email is sent. So we can make sure that the communications are duplicated so that we have a way to make sure that things don't get lost. So several of us will be notified so that we can make sure that we get people on it on that emergent type situation. So I believe there's a process going to happen of helping get the word out to that. We don't have a ton of people here listening, but we're trying to make some layers of stuff so that we don't tie up our 911 system with water leaks. And I would encourage people that if they are going to call our 911 center regarding these issues, to not use 911, but use the non-emergency number that we publicize so that we don't overwhelm our system for actual emergencies. It is not an emergency to have low water pressure. So just encourage people to not use that resource that way.
And so we have these handout, and it's going to be on our city Facebook page. I'm also going to put it out on all the other social media pages. One of the things as citizens come into the office, I've talked to them about, we are going into negotiations. If you have about the sewer, if you have questions, come in. We will also be sharing this. Again, call the non-emergency number, which is 360-533-8765. This will be out there on social media. We have handout on the table back there, and we will be providing them.
And call that if you think nobody knows yet. Not a, hey, I'm also, that doesn't need to be done that way. So we don't want to have 100 phone calls to the 911 center saying, hey, me too. But if you see a broken water main, then absolutely call that in, but we don't need everybody to call that in. It's not needed and overwhelms the system with, it's kind of a fragile system because there's not a ton of dispatchers or telecommunicators, I guess I better use the right word, working at the center at one time. And if there's 20 people from Cosmopolis calling to say my water pressure's low and we're having an actual emergency also occurring countywide, then it's too much and not a good use of our system. So just put that out there.
Please don't hesitate to reach out to us at City Hall. We're happy to answer any questions. So talking about emergency management and, what we're looking at as we move forward this year, we are going to be working with the Grace Harbor County Emergency Management, and we are developing a call system. We're looking at any kind of emergency. It could be our dam, it could be flooding, it could be a major water emergency, but we are going to have steps in place, and we're going to let our citizens know. Councilman Spargo has agreed to sit on this committee and be part of it. And Hannah Cleverly will be working with us. We have a meeting coming up here, I think, when is it next?
January 23rd, Thursday.
January 23rd. And so we will be working on that too. So we've got a lot going on as we move forward. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, well, Carrie, is there a way to have that email and phone number put like onto the actual water bill, so
Sure,
that it's
yes.
there?
Yeah.
For them to actually see
We
it,
can.
and that way it'll start to become a part
Yeah,
of. That
like this
will
month.
recognize it.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's a little tagline that we can fill in kind of
Yeah.
every month. This month, for example, it talks about wrapping your pipes because the cold weather's
Right.
coming.
Right.
So we can absolutely put that
Yeah,
out
so
there.
it'd be
Yes.
good, that way it's always there, on there,
Yep.
and they have it, and
That's
it'll
a great
become
idea.
recognizable to them as being, that's the emergency numbers and stuff, cool.
And I know that Councilman Darcy wanted to talk a little bit about that because last winter when we had frozen pipe, we had a number of breaks. And so did you
There
want
was
to add
like-
anything else to that?
Yeah, there was it's been like 4 or 5, 6 of them, last winter, when it drops down into below the 20s, down into the 20s. All of our pipes, especially down here in the lower end, because they're the oldest ones, are susceptible to cracking, breaking, whatever. So, yeah, we have a few more days before it does start to dip down into the 20s. So we have time if you want to, it's a good idea to wrap anything, unhook your hoses, go grab a bag, maybe get some salt to do your steps with, so you don't step out, and hurt yourself. Cause I've done that myself and it doesn't feel good. So, yeah, anything, sweep up your leaves or whatever if you have around your porch area, any of that kind of stuff, get water. If your pipes do break, then you have emergency water already, to be able to at least flush your toilet and drink and boil some, tea or soup or whatever, so, yeah, just kind of make yourself a tub and get it all prepared so that you have it when it happens, because chances are it could.
And Council Member Skinner, he's our public safety. Anything else you want to add that we think about these really cold nights coming or mix of what?
Well, same along this line as Sue, just protect your home, protect yourself, your animals, everything around. We're gonna deal with this. It doesn't get real bad unless the wind blows real hard, and I don't know that we're expecting that to happen, the cold temperatures, but you got vents under your house, the older houses, lots of them have open areas. try to get them blocked off so the wind doesn't have the opportunity to blow under the house. That's what'll break more pipes faster than just about anything else. And then just what Sue says, we're not expecting snow or rain from my understanding either, but that still doesn't stop frost from forming on the ground. Make sure you look where you're walking as you motivate yourself around in the mornings, early mornings up here. And then watch out for other people. Only other one that I wanted to add to was the response. I had been gone and I didn't come home till 5:30. And so didn't know that there was a broader problem until I looked down the road and seen yellow flashing lights and, oh, what's going on? I walked in my house and my wife didn't have any idea that there was a problem. And I instantly picked up my phone, and where 3-4 months ago, when we had the water break, the big water line break, and social media blew up with every complaint in the book, this time I was pleasantly surprised on the response from citizens talking the earlier in the day, hey, I'm losing pressure, anybody else got an idea? And before long, yes, it was just what Chief was talking about, we don't want a 911, but addresses, streets, everybody that was involved or had been affected was starting, that were online, were able to talk. My next door neighbor not, I walked out to get in my car to go see what was going on. Hey, you have any idea what's going on with the water? I was able then to assure them, we're working on the break and it's going to, it sounds like it's gonna be taken care of here shortly. And he was still actually, after I went and talked to Tom and came back, they were still outside and I told them, hey, you should go in the house and open your faucet. You're gonna probably have water. And so it was just a change in attitude. It really was a change in attitude, and it's slow to happen, but it is a better thing that's going on.
And it was really nice to have Chris on board, because when this happened, I knew we needed to notify our citizens right away. And so I had posted, if you have low water or you know water, please send your address and that. And so Chris is on the phone and I'm reading everyone, so he could map out the area and really have a broad view of what was happening in the community to move forward with the water boil advisory and keep citizens posted. And again, any of this, if we talk about the cold weather, we talk about these incidents, again, we have very senior citizens, much more than me, and who are isolated or who may need information. Walk next door. We are a small community that takes care of one another. If you're online, reach out, help those individuals, please. Okay. I think we're gonna move on to Clerk Barr and her state audit finding presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, as most of you know, we entered into a state audit last year, Q4 of last year, so end of September, October, November, and most of December. This was for years 2022 and 2023, so audits are always backward looking. So I want to let people know what years we're really talking about here. It was not for the current year. We will be audited again in 26 for 2024 and 2025. So those audits are yet to come. Most of you may or may not know that when we have this audit, we have the happy event of being able to pay for that audit. So this year, the audit cost us $32,900. It's not cheap. It was over our estimate of $25,000, which was budgeted, so we are over budget there. And the reason is they did a much deeper dive than what they normally would have done. They did actually look to years earlier than 2022 to find trends. When we have an audit, the 2-year audit is an accountability audit and a financial audit. And what that means, accountability is more like processes and controls, right? How are you doing with those types of things? And then the financial end of it is, and how does that impact you financially? And are your financials accurate and sound? So that's the deep dive that we went through on this audit. It was very time consuming and quite in depth. So basically what they looked at on risk, and that's what any audit is really assessing is risk of the financials being stated incorrectly in a material way. So materiality always comes into play. If you have something that you've entered that say it's a couple $100 off, they're not gonna consider that material. If you have something that say $100,000 off, that hits a threshold of materiality for a city our size with our revenues. And so that's when something enters into the realm of a finding, and a finding is what does get disclosed. But there are other things that the audit department helps you with to say, you know what, you could do this a little bit better, you could have some different policies in place. You could have policies that are a little more detailed to help your city run more efficiently and to make sure that your backup is behind everything you need and what we might be looking for on the next audit. So that really focused around accounts receivable with utility billing and adjustments, which we will cover in more detail. Indicating just the overall financial condition of the city, cash receipting for timeliness and completeness, accounts payable, just looking at general disbursements. Do we have the correct backup with that? Because that's really important. We can't just be paying things off willy-nilly. Payroll, to look at, was the gross payroll accurate? Were any cash disbursements and cash outs done accurately? Do you have the proper payroll policies in place to allow for those disbursements? The fire department general disbursements. Now, the prior audit to this audit, there was a finding all around the fire department and disbursements that were not really properly documented or approved. That was a finding that was disclosed. The good news is they didn't find any of that in this audit, so that's great. So there's no more finding around the fire department. So I think that Chief Fowley and staff has done a really good job in ensuring that they are documenting things. They're following the purchase order process. Things are signed off. If they're making a charge on their card, that they in fact have those receipts and they are approved and that they're getting them over to City Hall so that when I go to actually pay the bills, I have everything there that I need. I also double check to make sure I don't have this documentation. Can you get it for me before I pay it? And prior staff did that as well. And that's what I think successfully resolved the prior finding that they had. So that's all really good news. The other thing, just a note, and they say they do this in every audit, is around Open Public Meetings Act. And it's primarily around compliance with minutes and executive sessions. That is kind of their hot button. When you go into an executive session, it's really important to say that the executive session will take no longer than whatever time limit it's going to be, when it starts and when it comes back. And those things really need to be clearly documented. So that's one thing that they asked to do. I think there was one meeting that didn't get clearly documented for in the time period, again, that we're talking about, 2022 to 2023. So some of the recommendations that they made, I'm just gonna give a highlight of the things that they want. They want a more detailed payroll policy. There are some instances where city staff was allowed certain things in payroll that was really following more the guidelines of the collective bargaining agreement the police have, and that wasn't clearly documented. So I'll be working on things like that. I'll get with the chief and say, does it make sense for these to be the same or not? So we'll be going over that. Accounts payable, some of the one or two accounts were not paid in a timely manner, so they're looking at that within 30 days. I did tell the mayor, I said, just know for 2024, you're gonna have some payments that happened during our kind of outage of staff that were over that 30-day mark. I've already talked to the auditors about that so that they understand the circumstances of what the city went through and really not having staff that was able to make payments in a timely fashion. The good news is none of our partners complained or anything about, hey, where's my money? So that's the other thing, on audit, if they find things untimely like that, they're very likely to call vendors and say, hey, do you find an issue with the city and how they're making payments? One issue that they came up with, again, it's not a finding or anything. It's more like, hey, you might want to consider. We didn't have a small and attractive asset listing for a tablet. We're working on making sure that we do have that. And currently our policy is anytime somebody has a piece of hardware, like a laptop or a tablet, we actually take a picture of the back of it. So we've got the serial number and everything. It gets tracked on a Excel sheet and then a copy of it goes in their personnel file. so that we can kind of track it in a couple of different ways. So we're working on refining that even more. Another one that we didn't have on a list in 2022, there was a AED that was purchased that did not make it onto the small and attractive asset list. So we'll be tagging that and making sure that that's there. And those are kind of the highlights on some of the exit recommendations. Again, Open Public Meetings Act, they said that, to make sure to have that. And on utility adjustments, they did find a few leak adjustments that were given where they didn't have the proper signature on that. Again, this is 2022, 2023. So now what we have in place is every adjustment that goes through is reviewed and either approved or denied, and signatures are there around it. So that was just recommendations. Now we're going to talk about the finding. In an audit, there are different levels. There can be a management letter, there can be recommendations, and then a finding. And actually it's recommendations, management letter, and finding. We only had recommendations, which are nice to haves and just suggestions. And then you have a finding. A finding is the thing that is the most publicized, right? This is the thing that if you go and look on the auditor's website, you're going to find this finding. And it's the thing you want to avoid. You don't want to have findings. And in this case, this finding was about really lack of adequate controls over utility billing. And not necessarily the billing process itself, but within the utility billing software, there are tables that get maintained. And these tables are what drive rates and how citizens get charged. And if those tables are not updated correctly, the citizens or customers will not get charged correctly. So this did happen. In some cases, it happened too early, and in some cases, it happened too late. How rates get approved are always by resolution. So there's a proposal that gets made for a rate increase. For Cosmopolis for water and sewer, it's generally because Aberdeen has increased their rate to us. And so we'll need to pass on that increase to citizens. But it is something that is voted on by council. It's very public. So these resolutions are voted on, they're approved, they're publicized. In this case, there were 5 years of rates that didn't always get entered in the correct way. So one thing I did talk to the auditors about is on the underbillings and overbillings that occurred to citizens. The prior stuff did have them in the system by like January. The problem with that is that in January when you bill, you're really billing for December. So it's a real fine line. One recommendation that I had and the auditor said that's a really good thing to have is the resolution only talks about the day it's effective. It does not talk about the billing cycle when it will affect. So we will change our resolutions to ensure that it's not only the effective date, but the billing cycle that it impacts as well. Because in fairness to Prairie staff, they did have it in the system on the date it was effective, but they ran the bills too soon. So that's really what created those overages, is those tables just not being managed or maintained, and no secondary review on those tables as well. So staff was going in and updating the tables, for which there are numerous. There are a lot of them to go through. It's quite a process. But then nobody else was really reviewing them. And then there was not any testing done on the first run or two bills to say, is this reasonable? Can I do the math and come up with these same calculations for this bill? And that really wasn't done. There wasn't any evidence of it at all. The other thing that happened, and this is where it becomes material, is our largest customer was not billed their flat sewer rate from June of 2019 when the system came up until April of 2023. And that resulted in just the charge alone, not including tax, but just the charge alone of $190,304 of revenue that the city did not collect because those tables were not updated. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about materiality. The other issues that they found around billing probably would not have even been called out because individually they're just not material. They would have said, probably a management letter here. You really shouldn't do it that way and you need to have better controls. But that $190,000 is what threw it right over the top. Additionally, we're allowed to charge tax on that. And our tax rate is 13.5%. So if you look at that, it was really $215,000. So it was a lot of money over several years that this went on, which is why, again, the audit cost us more money because they had to go back and look all the way to 2019 and then bring it all the way forward through 2024. So that's painful. What citizens probably want to know is how do we not do that to ourselves again? Well, as I mentioned, there's tables that get put out there, and the tables themselves do have an audit, so you can see what the old value was, what the new value is, what date it was done, and who did it. Our process that we have is those tables are updated. They're then reviewed by a secondary person. If Casey updates tables, I'm reviewing. If I'm updating tables, the mayor reviews. And once those tables are in place, the first bill run or the first payroll or whatever tables are being looked at, before any checks get cut, before bills go out, a sampling is taken of those and we do the math manually to make sure that those are in fact the correct rates that go in. And then we copy that and keep evidence of it. And I have basically a new year folder so that when the auditors come in next time and they want to see evidence, I have lots of it for them. And that's really what you should be doing in any system to make sure that it's right. Most modern ERP systems are all table driven, and those tables are key. They're the keys to the castle at the end of the day. And so it's really, really important that they be right. So what are our options at this point? I know early on, when I recognized that this was an issue, I did send an email out to our city attorney, Chris Coker. We probably do have the right to get this money. The question is what is the process that we will go through with it? But we'll be working together to try and figure out how do we go about doing this? Because it is a significant amount of money to the city. It hurt my heart just a little bit, I have to tell you, when I saw it. But yeah, it is painful. We will make sure to not have that happen again. Some of the other things that you will notice on this finding, as I mentioned before, in and of themselves would have never been called out because they're really not material at the end of the day. There was a period where there was underbilling and overbilling. It happened year after year. So in essence, it kind of nets out. For any one citizen, it's probably not any more than $10. But we can look at that and determine what that impact really is at an individual level, and we will be. I have all the data because I created it for the auditor, so that's how they know the accounts and the amount. So we'll be going through that. The other thing that we have to think about when we do resolutions, one of the entities that we bill, we're billing based on a hookup. The problem is from month to month, we don't know how many hookups are there. So we probably need to change that rate formula to something that is more consistent. Because it's, I think, an undue burden to have to go and figure out how many hookups a given entity has in any given month. Especially the fact that we have limited staff to go out and start doing the counting. So we will look to see how can we do that differently so that we're not caught with that, because they had a month that they sampled and they couldn't figure out how we came up with that rate for that month. And to be honest, I couldn't tell them either. And again, this is between 2022 and 2023. So are there any
Two
questions?
full years, not just the year.
Correct. It is from January of 2022 through December of 2023. So it is 2 full years. And the fact that this had such a level of materiality with one customer, they went from 2019 to 2024 September. And they also dug in other areas that widely as well, because sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. So, you know, when you have a real material finding like this, expect that there's going to be digging. That I would be shocked if they didn't. So, are there any questions?
Any questions?
Yes, are they going to continue the digging, what you were just referring to?
They're done with the audit. They've issued their finding, and if anybody wants to go and read it, you can go to sao.wa.gov. And I think you look under reports, and from reports, then you can put in the city of Cosmopolis. And if you scroll over, you can get over to this year's audit and the finding, and that's what you'll be able to read in detail. They were overall, you know, complimentary. We had a nice exit meeting with them. It was a good rapport. Our auditor was actually great. I've been through many audits in my career, but all with corporate America, not with public. But they were great auditors, right? They were responsive to things I would show them on why something is the way it is, and they'd go, "Oh, okay, well that makes sense. Let's move on." So yeah, it was a good rapport. Anything that they have in the finding, of course, they're going to be digging at next time. There's no question. And then the areas of, it would be good if you did this a little better, they'll be looking at those areas as well.
Any other comment?
I don't suppose the auditors provided any insight into the mystery funds that we have that we're not sure how we can use.
No, it's not a material thing for them. What they're really looking at is more transactionally based. Do you have the right documentation to back up the fact that you made this transaction? Whether it was cashing in or paying out, and that's really what they're looking at.
And if you're referring to the 50,000, it's a UTGO.
TGO, yeah,
bond, and so I'm in contact
with
with
the
the bond.
arbitrage and.
And the bond, and so we're working on that. I'd like to say processes are fast, would be fast, but they're not.
One thing the auditor did point out, and you're not gonna find it in documentation anywhere, but was to talk about the street fund that we had. They actually didn't know why we had it. So I'm gonna be looking at the possibility of, do we collapse that into the general fund? Now, there are certain monies that go there that absolutely belong there, like, the gas tax that we get, and probably the intermodal transportation tax that we do get. That probably should go there and stay there. I couldn't find anything in resolutions or in any ordinances of where it was set up, and I went back to like 1960, I think, might have been even 64, to find out kind of how it was set up, but I didn't see anything there. So I'm gonna be working with Tara on that. The auditor just kind of scratched their head and said, well, it's not a requirement that you have it. So any money we can put to the general fund is a good thing. So I'm gonna be looking at that to see what are the steps, what do we need to do? Currently, how that gets funded is, like I said, the motor vehicle fuel tax goes there, and then 10% of properties go there. So that's money we could be using for other things if it's really not being utilized there. Maybe at one time it was a requirement, but cause I asked, I said, is it required? She goes, nope. I said, okay, well, let's look at that. So that's one thing that I'll be looking at and working with Tara with on.
Any other questions?
Not a question, a comment, but I can either do it now or wait till council comments, whichever you want.
Okay, I think now would be fine.
This is where this starts to bother me tremendously. After the year that we had, what we walked into, and to get an audit like this from what had went on in the past, and I'm one of those that said we gotta move on from the past and work towards the future. And that's fine when it's attitudes and problems and this person done that or that person done this. But when it comes to $200,000 shorted this city with the financial problems that we have, that's totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable for anybody. The auditors will not specifically come out and blame anyone. That's not their job, one person. And I don't know that it's us as the council's job to come out and try to point fingers or find that person or people that allowed this to happen. But somewhere along the side, our citizenry should be just as upset as I am for what they've had to deal with in the last year or even previous to that, when it, no way in hell it can just be a mistake that somebody was incompetent in doing the job. You don't lose $200,000 without knowing that there's a. And I, one, for sure, want to see us work through our attorney and find out if we can go and back charge to Cosmo, or what we can do to try to recover some of these funds. Now, we know Cosmos hasn't paid their water bill for months and their water shut off. So to try now to think you're gonna collect another 200,000 from them, but there are liens that can be put on any kind of a sale of that facility, that those bills be paid before. I don't think this is something we should just chalk up, well, it was from the last people and it's experience that we won't let happen again. I have faith in our staff now that they're taking care of the books to the best of their ability. But I told you a long time ago, I don't mind getting a beating if I have it coming. We've taken a beating for a year over what went on in the past, and it's going to end. It's going to be done and over with. Won't take it anymore. And I don't expect anyone else up here should have to either. So I, as councilman, would sure hope we move forward with an investigation through our attorney on what our options are to recover this money. Thank you.
I want to say this, really, Kim, I'm right there with you. I was hoping to hear that the auditors were going to pursue some sort of action to determine if we needed to pursue legal action or not. Apparently, that's not in their purview. However, something needs to be done. $215,000 is a hell of a lot of money. So some sort of investigative, something needs to be done.
I just wanna agree that it was quite shocking to see the number and especially after, nobody likes to talk about the past, but it is, our future is our past. It's what we end up have had to clean up, and deal with. And the public should, take heed in this situation also, and maybe some attitudes might change around things that have been said about, certain people and things, and so, yeah, it's a tough number to grasp that it went on for so long, and, yeah, and I am hopefully that, our attorney can come up with, something that can move us forward in trying to get this money back. Cause it's a lot, it's substantial, and
Cause I have to question if that was a simple act of negligence or if it was something a little more intentional.
yeah, it would be hard to think, we could see possibly, a few months, a month here, kind of that for 4 years, at least. On purpose or however you want to put it, but I would find that, quite, hard to just not ever find that you made that mistake, Oops.
So we're not sure. We are, Cliff Bar is working and will be working, as I will, with our council moving forward on this, situation. It's been an interesting, a challenging year. The beginning was pretty rough. I feel like we've come a long way. Councilman Wynn said, we really have come a long way. As I said, we have some bumps ahead of us. It's gonna be tight. It's gonna be very tight. We are operating on very little funds, but we're gonna keep this city running. We're gonna keep it operating, and we're gonna take care of one another in this community. And we will get you the answer. Okay, are there public comments? At this time, I'm going to open the floor for public comment. Please state your first name and address only the council body, not an individual council person. This is not a question, it's a comment time, and you have 3 minutes. Anyone in the audience? And your name?
Kim, and you said my address? Or
You don't have to give
Okay,
your address.
okay. So I was just coming in here because I wanted to say thank you for the quick response on the water situation. That was awesome. I wasn't expecting it to come back that quickly, so it was great that Aberdeen worked with us. I personally would have preferred a text notification or a phone call. I don't like having to depend on social media to get my information. And in the case of reverse 911, even if it's something that it would have went out to everybody in the city, I think over notification would have been better than under notification. I don't know what that looks like as far as what you put in the message, but even if you were to just say these addresses, these specific streets are affected, then those people could take into consideration how they wanted to move forward with the boil water advisory. So I'm glad to hear that there's been conversation about what to do in the future for that. But that was my biggest concern is don't want to have to go on social media or the office that I don't go to every single day, to get my information, so.
Thank you, Kim. I really appreciate it. And this is why I encourage citizens. We want to hear your thoughts because it's going to help us develop better system, and we will work on that. Thank you. Any other comments? So hearing no comments at this time, and we do not have any new business. So, so we're not taking any new actions at this time. Council comments as we get ready to wrap up the meeting.
On a lighter note, we, think we missed approving the old minutes. And
No,
I don't see it on the agenda. Is,
no, it's part of the consent agenda.
Consent agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, the consent agenda.
see, it was a lighter moment. And one other thing, this idea of taking the trees down, using this grant money to take the trees down, until a couple of weeks ago, really, that's something we're worried about. Is it a big deal? Tree gonna fall down once in a while? Some property on the Sats up at Summer Home, and we had the storm that came, and we have a group of alders down around a deck, and one of them blew over and took out our water line. Yeah, okay. You can see the roots on this group was rotted. No roots came up, just a tree fell over. And wow, we're gonna have to look at this, and there's 4 more trees here growing 4 different angles. I got sent to me a picture just the other day that one more of those trees on a beautiful day, no wind blowing, no nothing, just decided to fall over too. And the same deal, it had rotted off at the roots, and it's a 28-inch through alder tree. They were all alder trees, and we got 3 more of them sitting there that we're looking at going, no, they're coming down. We gotta take them down. We have family, friends, everybody up there all the time, and those trees can come down. Now, understanding that their root system, once they get watered and wet on a constant basis and the ground gets soggy, it's easy for them trees to come down. So the idea of taking those trees out of Mill Creek is a very good thing. I commend us or whoever's decision that is to stick to that and make that happen.
Thank you.
Good deal.
So one of the things, trees are very stressed with the weather changes that we had. They are not getting the water to their roots. They're rotting, and trees that you would think might be perfectly fine can do what Mr. Councilman Skinner just said. And we have a lot of them here in Cosmopolis. So with that donation, I was we talked to an arborist, and with that information, we have a RCO grant that has specific things that have to be done in Mill Creek. And those projects actually had rotten trees. So the money that we would have been spending for those projects would have probably been ruined within a year or 2. And so that generous donation, the donor trusted and said, do what you think needs to be done. So for the safety of citizens, and so the work that we're putting into the preservation from the RCO state grant, we wanted to make sure that our citizens are going to be safe using those areas, and the work that being completed isn't going to be destroyed in a few months. So thank you for sharing that, because we do have some in Macarenco Park that we've looked at, and it's a safety issue for citizens. So, we do have to address it.
I have one more thing I'd like to add before we go. Once again, thank you for everyone coming out on the new year. I hope everyone had a good New Year's. We are working on replacing stop signs. There's lots of faded stop signs throughout Cosmopolis. It was something I wanted to get done before the end of the year, and it just got away from me. I'm hoping to have new stop signs spread throughout town within the hopefully next 3 months. But I've just been kind of documenting what I've been seeing as I drive around. If anyone has one nearby them, please reach out to council3@cosmopoliswa.gov, or my contact is available on the city website.
And to add to that too, we have some street signs that are very faded that we need to work on. So, thank you.
Yeah, I think as far as the tree conversation, I think it's also good that we could utilize, Grace Harbor PUD also, because they will come out and take out ones that could take lines out.
Yeah.
So it would be good to sometime in the near future, maybe talk with them and have them come out and do like a survey of the area, cause I know Mill Creek is very susceptible, because if they fall towards Mill Creek, right behind where my house is on Alder, they're basically gonna take all the lines out, and so it would be, and that, pretty much that whole hillside, they're all kind of root exposed, and
And I called the PUD today.
yeah, and then, yeah, so it'd be good, yeah, partnership with them to have them come out and do a look and take out whatever, because, you know, that's their responsibility, so it's not charged to the city for that.
So I personally want to thank, our pro tem mayor, Councilman Skinner. I had to miss a couple meetings in December. And I appreciate you stepping in for me. He hid my tag tonight. I didn't even have my name tag, I think. I think he thought I wasn't coming back, but here I am. And, I want to thank Cliff Bar, when she talked about work for this audit. It was constant, and she put in many long nights, and she's pretty amazing. And I'm gonna applaud. Thank you very much for your hard work.
I'm gonna blush.
Okay.
Wait till you get the bill.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I've already got it. Thank
And
you.
so with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Councilman Spargo motions to adjourn meeting.
Is there a
Councilman Colette seconds.
Okay, being no other business, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.